joy because this is for the graduates. It means a lot to me as well, and I talk about my little theme later, and my gratitudes. So right now, I'm going to introduce Dr. Terry Paulson. He is your speaker for the evening.
First of all, I've never done a commencement. Isn't that a cool thing? Commencement, I mean, it basically means for those of you who have graduated, you're just beginning, which is exciting. Because when you talk about going through all the work that you've gone through, the real challenge is now. I mean, it's like, once you graduate, it's like your learning permit. The learning really happens afterwards because now you're choosing what you're doing. And that is the exciting part of this because you're going to shape the career. And it's going to be an opportunity for you to go through the challenges and the ups and downs of that. You'll oftentimes find yourself wondering whether you know the answers. Just realize you're not alone. Because all of us have doubts about our ability to do what we're supposed to do. I often find the words of Pope John the 23rd. He said, I sometimes wake at night and begin to think about a serious problem. And then I say, I'm going to talk to the Pope. And then I wake up and remember I am the Pope. You see, you don't have all the answers, but one of the beautiful things about life is you've got each other. You have 3 other graduates who are graduating with you, and they're going to be going through some of the similar kinds of experiences. And the challenge is, in fact, I did a program for McDonald's at their McDonald's University. They have on the wall a statement, we believe in collaborative problem solving in school. That's called cheating. The reality is every single person you meet is going to give you additional learning because now the customers are really in control. We think that when you own a company or you start a business, you're in control. You may have a certification, but when it really comes down to it, we're having to serve people. And when you're serving other individuals, realize the greatest thing that you will find, it isn't your job to impress them with the work you do. It's your job to be impressed with them. I've found over the years, and no matter what your profession or background, the more impressed you are of the people you serve, the more likely it is they will appreciate you and they'll be back. Because when you're providing a service that's important to them and they're going to use and need you often. But one of the challenges that you have is every single one of them can teach you things. We oftentimes see people, we may see age, we may see background, their names, but in reality, if you really want to be special to them, learn to ask a lot of questions. One of the first managers I worked for, in fact, I was 17 years old. I just got out of high school. And I worked at Stanford Linear Accelerator. It was in Palo Alto, California. My title was a lab technician. I drove a truck. I don't know why they called me a lab technician. Ultimately, the guy I worked for, every single week he'd take a walk with me, and he always asked the same question. He said, Terry, you've been here a week now. What's working for you? And I remember looking at him and I said, I don't know. I just got a new job and I have no idea what's working. I'm just glad I have a job. And I struggled to come up with something. And I said, well, the guys taught me how to load the truck. I want to know how to load the truck. That's working. And then he says, I'm going to ask you this every week. And I looked at him like, uh-oh, I'm in deep trouble. We talked to my mother. She knows I don't know anything. I said, maybe it'll all be over. But every week he asked me that question because now you're a professional. You got the certification, but that starts inside. It starts with your ability to know if I'm impressed with the people around me, if I'm open to learning from them throughout my entire life, I'm going to do just fine. Learn to ask the people that you're working on, what's working for you? Tell me your life. When I went through, I'm a clinical psychologist by training, and when I went through our training program, which was in Pasadena, one of the individuals did their dissertation on barbers, and what they basically said was, people who are stylists and barbers are the closest to therapists that we have. And so what they did is they studied the effectiveness of training the barbers and stylists to be more effective as therapists, and whether it would improve their business and whether they could have an impact on people's lives. Because when you're working on people, they'll tell you their lives. And in response to that, the more that you're open to listening and being encouraging, because how many agree on busy? We've been talking about that tonight at our table. How many millions of people are in LA? But it's hard to meet people. It's hard to really get through, because when you walk down the street in LA, there's just too many people to say hi to everybody. It'd be bizarre. Hi. Thousands of them. So what you do is you put your face in park, and you walk by people, and no one knows anybody. But you get to touch people in a very meaningful way. And the real challenge becomes, how can I be actually therapeutic to people? How can I let them know one person cares about them, and I'm going to be in your life on a regular basis? And you have a strong impact by the questions you ask, by the interest you show, by the chance you give them to know that they are not alone. And I think that's one of the things that we work hard to do. One of the other things that I think is important about your business is the realization you'll have bad days. It's one thing to receive training, but how many of you agree, as soon as you move to the real world, there's an awful lot of things that can go wrong. One of the things that M. Scott Peck once said in A Road Less Traveled, his opening line, life is difficult. And once you figure that out, you're on the way towards being able to be far more effective. It fits with the research that they've done on how do you maintain an optimistic attitude in a world that is very easy to focus on what's wrong. Basically, the media focuses on anything that is wrong, and they have segments every night. In fact, I talked to a producer at a nightly news. I said, why do we have only negative news? And he says, we have very good data. We know what people want to watch. They want to watch the problem. And he says, the frightening thing is, I hate to say this, but for every day of the week, we have past footage of past disasters and problems. So if there's no current one, we can have an anniversary of an old one. Why? Because it gets people to watch television. But in real life, we're missing the positives of what happened. What are we doing to increase the likelihood that you're asking the right questions, so you're dealing with that? And research on optimism has shown the most optimistic people in the world are not individuals that just talk optimism. They're the ones who've earned it. The more difficult your life, the more likely it is you will be optimistic later in life because of all the challenges you've gone through. The biggest danger you can have is a life that is so easy that no one ever is challenged, and then all of a sudden you go through a crisis and there's no answer to it. One of my best teachers, and I know Margraretha, she's a wonderful, caring person, but she can also be difficult. She's challenging. She makes you do things you didn't think you were capable of doing. How many remember your toughest teacher? How many go back to your toughest teacher? I remember vividly Mrs. Nason, senior English. And I was into football, so I loved playing football, so I didn't worry about English. But they put me in an advanced English class because I had good grades. And I came in and they had an assignment and I wrote the paper. And then the day I put it in, I had just done it the night before. The next Monday I got my paper back and there were red marks all over it. It looked like it had been Christmas. And I looked at it and I turned to the back page, as you always do, you go to your grade. I had a C-. I had never had a C- in English. I'd always had A's. And I go, oh my God, I'm in football, I gotta get a B. I waited until after class and I went up to her and I said, I don't know how to say this. And she says, I know. Because I don't think you're used to this. And I said, I'm not. I'm used to getting good grades. I know. And when I saw your paper and I read it, it looked like you did this the night before it was due. Uh-oh. And I said, well, I had football practice. She said, you know, I read it and then I realized there are parts of this that show me you could be a good writer. And I'm not going to let you get away with this work. I'm going to grade you harder than I grade some of the other people. Today I could probably hire a lawyer in sue her for discrimination. But you want to know something? She is the best teacher I ever had. And every paper I wrote for her, everything I did, you now are in a place where you're managing your own life. You're managing your own career. Expect as much as yourself as Margraretha has expected you in getting through this program. I have an honest belief that the more that you challenge yourself to be the person you're capable of being, the more successful you're going to be. I don't care what the area is, but in this area, it's one that you need to do. I went through some graduation speeches that people have given. Wayne Gretzky, great hockey player. When he first went into his career, he was not scoring well. He's an all-time scoring leader in hockey. And he was interviewed on a radio show, and I heard him speak, and he was finally asked, what points in your career made the biggest difference? And he said, well, I wasn't scoring. And my coach pulled me aside after a game where I hadn't scored, and he probably put up against the wall as they do in hockey. Said, you know what, Wayne? You outskated everybody out there on the ice, but you did not take a single shot on net. Miss some tomorrow night. You miss 100% of the shots you never take. You are now in a place where you're out of the comfort of school, and you're into a place where you're going to make a career. You miss 100% of the shots you never take. I don't care how many times you got to go, where you got to ask, what you got to do, who you're going to be talking to, but the more that you're out there, the more active you are in doing that, the more successful you're going to be. One of the other things, I was looking at Denzel Washington had a commencement speech that he gave. His whole theme was on the fact that you're going to have a lot of mistakes. You're going to learn from every one of them, but he said, always fall forward. And I love that statement. You can fall and let that be the cornerstone of where you will end up, or you can choose to allow every single mistake that I make as a sounding board for me to continue to move and do something else. So the challenge becomes, how do I allow myself to build that in? I'm going to make sure that in the process of what I do, I'm going to continue to be effective. Know also that you're not going to win them all. I mean, they pay a 300 hitter better than they pay a 200 hitter. One of the things I like to say is there'll be times you'll do things exactly perfectly and it won't work out. I call that heroic efforts. And every once in a while you got to say to yourself, good job. Pat yourself on the back alone. And now realize, don't do this with other people that think you need therapy. But outside of that, when you're alone, you have to learn to realize something. You manage yourself before you'll ever manage anybody else. You're with you far more. The average American, 80% of your internal statements about yourself tend to be negative. You are more likely to lose sleep over mistakes than you are to focus on any kind of success. And you say, well, that seems unrealistic. Well, it isn't. How many agree a good mistake is worth 45 minutes of self-whipping interspersed over a 2 to 3 day period of time? You'll lose sleep over it. What do you say to yourself when you do something right? I was lucky. I should have done it a month ago. Even when you do feel good, how long is it going to last? You don't lose sleep over the good ones. How long have you laid awake at night going, one day? One of the things you learn in being the professional you're capable of being is make sure that in the journey that you're taking, every single day you catch yourself effective. I had a man, I went through training with him, and he said, you know what I do every day? Every day at the end of the day, I write myself an email. I write one thing I did that day that I felt good about, and I send it to myself. The next morning when he comes to work, he reads what he said the night before to let him know that he had a good day last day. Then he stores it in a file of all the good things he's done. And then he expects to do it the next day. You see, if you wait for other people to give you the accolades you need to maintain your motivation, you will never, ever. You're handing over control to other people. I manage myself. One of the things about being a professional is if you're waiting for the approval of other people, you on days aren't going to get any. I mean, there are days everybody's going to have their own problems, their own issues. But you can manage yourself. So I'm going to challenge you on every single day to take the time to write down what's working for you. Write it into your email, put it into a calendar, whatever you do that makes it work, make it happen. Eric Byrne also said, I'm a strong believer in this. How many agree life should be fun? I believe most of us love to be around people that have a good time. In fact, when they look at attributes of a successful professional, either a boss or an employee, the most successful part of that tends to be, in fact, it's in every ranking that you'll have, is a good sense of humor. If a person has a good sense of humor, they can handle almost anything that goes on in life because you learn to laugh at yourself, and most of you have plenty of material when you laugh at yourself because you know how stupid you are sometimes. So the real challenge becomes on a daily basis, you ought to laugh. Give yourself permission. Who is the safest target for your humor? Always yourself, because if you laugh at yourself before somebody else does, you win. They love laughing with you instead of at you, and so if I'm able to focus on that. In fact, Eric Byrne, who's a psychiatrist, once said, he said, what's the difference between a healthy and an unhealthy person? He says a healthy person goes yes, no, and whoopee. An unhealthy person goes yes, but, and no whoopee. And I think that's a pretty good description of what life is. If you can't have fun on a daily basis, realize it makes a difference in the people and the experience they have with you. I honestly believe that one of the qualities of in any trade, in any profession, is the smile you put on the face when they come in and you greet them. Because there are far too many people in this world who don't have anybody who cares. And they're very alone. And we already know that if you are a person that listens, that asks questions, that allows them to get into their life, they'll come back. Because you're a friend. You're not just a stylist or a barber, you're somebody that meets that need. One of the other final thoughts I'll share with you. People say, well, where am I going? What's it going to happen? You've got to learn to connect the dots. The trouble with connecting the dots is, you see, when you have art, remember the old art pages where you had the dots and you had to do it and you could see the picture? Life isn't like that. The only time you connect the dots is when you get near the end of your life and you look back and you go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. But you don't plan all the side trips. You don't plan all the professions. I was never going to be a speaker. That was not my goal. I was going to be a psychologist, and I was going to meet with people. And then this one person said when I spoke to the local chamber, gee, you've had some things I really want my people to hear. And they said, would you come into my company and speak for my people? And I said, well, I don't do that. I'm a psychologist. People come to me. And then he said, we'll pay you. And I'm flexible. And so I started speaking. And then one of the people who saw me speak on an IBM program that he attended, he said, who is the speaker I ought to have? And they wrote my name down. I get a call from corporate headquarters at IBM. We hear you're a speaker that we ought to have. And I remember over the phone saying, really? Well, that's good. I'm glad you heard that. And then they said, we're not sure we can afford you. I was making nothing. And I knew if I told them what my charge would be, it wouldn't be enough. I just said, oh, they're going to not hire me. And so I made up the story. Well, it depends on how many people you're going to have, how far I'm going to fly, where I've got to go, and what's in your budget. And they told me, and I said, you have me. And I did 20 programs a year for IBM right at the start of my career to launch my program. You're going to have happy accidents. That's what I call them. Happy accidents you didn't earn. But they just come at you, and all of a sudden you go, this is good. You get one client who's what I call a hub person. You know what are hub people? They know everybody. And when you find a client that knows everybody, they tell everybody. They'll go on Facebook, they go over here, they go over there. And pretty soon, you are famous because you provide quality service. Just remember, it's an adventure. There's side pockets that you'll find, and there are people. And here's the beauty of it. Every person you meet becomes part of your life. It's part of your story. And ultimately, some of them will be your friends for life. And even if you move out of state or whatever, they're still connected to you because they're part of your story, you're part of theirs. And you have an impact that is far more exciting than almost anybody. Now, I also realize there's going to be competition for you. This is a profession where there are an awful lot of people who do this particular area. I love Leonard Nimoy, who was in Star Trek. You know, he was one of the guys with the funny ears. And he, in order to become an actor, early on, you know, it's hard to get started in acting. And so he was a taxi driver in New York. And his taxi driving paid for his early years in acting. And he shared once a story about he picked up Senator John Kennedy. And he picked him up in New York, and he had him in the car. And they started talking about it. He was a senator, and he was a young taxi driver. Told him that he was working into getting an acting. And then, you know, Kennedy turned to him and he said, you know, I think acting, you know, driving a taxi is very much like politics. He said, you know, ultimately, you're going to be in a place where you're going to have a lot of things that are going to go wrong, and there are going to be problems, but in reality, you're still in a place, there's always going to be room for one more good one. And ultimately, the only thing you control are you one of those good ones. Because once you're in a position where you take the expertise you have, the knowledge you have about building a company and a group of people who believe in the work that you're doing, once you do that, it begins to grow and it has a life of its own, and you take that responsibility. We talk about apprenticeships, we talk about entrepreneurship. I believe one of the only ways in the world to ultimately be effective is to be a professional or entrepreneur who essentially is in control of your own income. Because how you do your work, what you do, increases the likelihood you'll have more clients. And once you're in control of that and you love it, and you refer, and you make it easier to refer, you know the future is yours. So when you talk about connecting the dots, I hope at the end of your life you look back and you look at this dot that you have tonight. This dot where you experience and you go through and you receive your certificate. It is the start of an amazing career. And one that involves serving people in a very meaningful and a powerful way. When you touch a person's head, when there is that connection that you have, that's a powerful connection. And I challenge you and I honor you that the roles that you have ahead of you are going to be something that you're going to look back. And I hope you, along with Margraretha, understand something about this whole profession. I hope you end up being some of the people that end up training people 10 years down the line, where you're the ones who are making the career for other people. Because once you get to give back to the profession that you work with, then you truly take a stand in being the professionals you're capable of being. And all I can say is every one of the people here, we're ready to be on the sidelines applauding you. I don't know, the older you get, the more you want other people to be successful. And I think what ends up happening, and we're going to hear from other people tonight, just remember that we want you to be successful. There's nothing more exciting. When I saw my son as a minister, when I saw him do his first sermon, and I sat in the audience, tears rolling down my eyes. Why? Because he found his place. You found your place. Now it's yours. Take it, enjoy it, laugh a little, serve a lot, and I think you'll find you've made a very, very wise choice. I know not only is this your dream and you're making it happen, but I know also this is Margaretha's dream. Because I remember when I first met her and she was talking about this in the apprenticeship program. You are the first graduates of that program. And I got to tell you, I know she is going to be a mother hen in your life for a lifetime. And if you ever need somebody to come back to and give you a little encouragement or give you a little bit of thought, she's going to be there for you. And I know that's why she got started in this anyway. Because ultimately, it's moving the profession forward, making a difference for people who want to have something that they can put their heart into. So thank you very much for this evening. I hope you enjoy this and you take it and make it yours.